Welcome back to Grimverse History, where we uncover the strange and forgotten sides of history. Tonight, we step into the shadowed arenas of Byzantium, where entertainment, devotion, and cruelty collided in ways few empires dared to record. The Byzantine Empire is remembered for its golden domes, sacred icons, and divine lore, yet beneath those mosaics, people screamed for sport. Some spectacles were praised as holy justice, others as public celebration, and many were so brutal, even chroniclers chose to look away. You push open a heavy wooden door. Your footsteps echo as torches flicker against marble walls. Before we continue, gently settle in. If these stories speak to you, consider liking this video and subscribing to Grimverse History, and turn on notifications so you can return each night. It is Constantinople, centuries after Rome's fall. The empire calls itself Christian, eternal, civilized. But tonight, the arena waits. A woman is chained on all fours in the center of the Hippodrome of Constantinople. Iron shackles bind her wrists and ankles. She is naked except for torn rags. Her back is marked with fresh lash wounds. 50,000 people fill the stone seats, rising up on all sides. They are screaming, laughing, placing bets. Behind her, she can hear something approaching. She turns her head enough to see guards leading a massive bull through the arena gates. The animal is enormous, over 1,000 pounds of muscle and horn. It is being driven directly toward her. This is not an execution. This is what the Byzantines called entertainment. Her name is Helena. She is 23 years old, a member of a noble family aligned with the blue faction. Right now, she can feel the hot sand of the arena floor burning her knees and palms. Constantinople is in summer. The sun is merciless. She's been kneeling here for 2 hours already. The iron shackles have cut into her wrists. Blood runs down her forearms and drips into the sand. The crowd noise is overwhelming, a roar that never stops. 50,000 voices merged into something inhuman. She can smell herself, sweat and fear and blood. She can smell the arena, ancient sand that has soaked up blood for 3 centuries. Old death mixed with fresh. She can hear the bull getting closer, the sound of its hooves on stone, the guards shouting commands, the crack of whips driving it forward. Her breathing is coming fast and shallow. Panic is setting in. She wants to run, but the chains hold her in place. She is positioned exactly where they want her, facing away from the approaching animal, unable to see it, only hear it getting closer and closer. The crowd is chanting now, rhythmic, coordinated. She cannot make out the words over the roar, but she knows they are not cheering for her survival. They paid to see something happen, something that will be talked about for years, something that will make other women think twice before opposing the Green faction. Helena does not yet know that 3 other women have already died in this arena this week. She does not know that what is about to happen to her has been carefully planned by men who understand exactly how to destroy a person without killing them. She does not know that she will survive this day, but wish for the rest of her short life that she had not. What she does know is that the bull is almost behind her now. She can feel its breath, hot and wet, on her back. She starts screaming. Here is what they never taught you about the Byzantine Empire. You know about the beautiful mosaics and the soaring domes of Hagia Sophia. You learned about Constantine and Justinian and the preservation of Roman law, but you never learned that the Hippodrome of Constantinople was a slaughterhouse where political enemies were destroyed in front of cheering crowds for over 1,000 years. You never heard about the systematic use of public humiliation and torture as instruments of state control. And you definitely never discovered the specific methods Byzantines used to break women who threatened the political order. Built in the 3rd century and expanded by Constantine in 330 AD, it became the political and social center of the Byzantine Empire. The structure was massive, over 400 meters long, 100 millimeters wide. Rising stone seats that could hold 100,000 spectators, though 50,000 was more typical. At one end stood the cathema, the imperial box where emperors sat to watch. The arena floor was fine sand imported from Egypt, expensive, specially chosen. Around the outer walls ran corridors and chambers, storage for equipment holding cells for prisoners. And beneath everything, a network of tunnels and rooms that most citizens never saw. It was infrastructure for state terror. You need to understand the faction system to understand what happened in that arena. Byzantine society was divided between two groups, the blues and the greens. Originally, these were chariot racing teams, sports fandom. But by the 5th and 6th centuries, they had evolved into something far more dangerous. Political parties, religious movements, street gangs, military forces, social identities. If you were born into a blue family, you were blue for life. Same with green. The factions controlled neighborhoods, ran protection rackets, maintained private armies. They had their own uniforms, their own meeting halls, their own underground prisons. When faction violence erupted, the streets of Constantinople became war zones. Hundreds could die in a single night of rioting. And the Hippodrome was where faction loyalty was most visible, most important, most dangerous. When you attended races, you sat in your faction's section, wore your faction's colors, cheered only for your faction's chariots. Any perceived disloyalty could get you killed, not by authorities, by your own faction members who saw you as a traitor. This system gave emperors a tool. They could manipulate faction rivalries to control the population, promise favor to one faction to keep them loyal, threaten the other faction to keep them compliant, use both factions against each other to prevent them from uniting against imperial authority. And when political enemies needed to be destroyed publicly, the Hippodrome provided the perfect venue. Tens of thousands of witnesses, faction members eager to participate. An arena literally designed for spectacular violence. Let me be clear about something. This was not ancient history to the Byzantines. This was not barbarism they had evolved beyond. This was deliberate policy in a Christian empire that claimed moral superiority over pagan Rome. So Helena was trapped, born into a blue family, engaged to marry a blue official. Her family had wealth and status within their faction. But in 532 AD, tensions between blues and greens had reached a breaking point. The Emperor Justinian had angered both factions through heavy taxation and religious persecution. For once, blues and greens united against him. The result was the NA riots. And what happened in the Hippodrome during those riots was the single largest stadium massacre in human history. January 18th, 532 AD. The Hippodrome is packed. Chariot races are scheduled, but no one is watching the track. Both blues and greens are chanting the same word, Na victory, not for their chariots against the emperor. They are demanding Justinian abdicate, demanding he remove corrupt officials, demanding tax relief. The emperor is in the cathedra. He can hear them. 50,000 people calling for his removal. This has never happened before. Blues and greens united, chanting together. This is not a riot yet. This is a political demonstration, a show of unified opposition. Justinian sends officials to negotiate. They enter the arena. The crowd shouts them down, refuses to disperse. The officials retreat, report to the emperor that the situation is deteriorating. Justinian makes a decision, one that will define his reign, one that will result in more deaths in a single day than most ancient battles. He orders the imperial guards to seal the gates. All of them. Every exit from the Hippodrome, 50,000 people are now trapped inside. They realize what is happening. The chanting stops. Confusion spreads. Then fear, then panic. People rush toward the gates, find them locked, barred from outside. They are trapped in the arena with an emperor who has decided to solve his political problem in the most direct way possible. Justinian had called in his best general, Belisarius, a military genius who had conquered Vandal Africa and would later reconquer Italy. Belisarius entered the Hippodrome through the imperial passage with 3,000 soldiers, heavy infantry, armed with swords and spears, no bows, no ranged weapons. The soldiers formed a line across the arena floor, began advancing on the crowd. The people in the stands had nowhere to go. No weapons, no armor, no training. Most were civilians, merchants, craftsmen, laborers, families who had come to watch races. They tried to climb the walls, tried to break through the sealed gates. Some jumped from the upper tiers, 30 feet down onto stone, breaking bones, dying on impact. The soldiers reached the stands and began the killing. Systematic, efficient, moving row by row through the sections, stabbing anyone they could reach. Men, women, children, the elderly. No discrimination, no mercy. This went on for hours. The screaming could be heard across the city. People trapped in upper sections watched the soldiers work their way up toward them, knowing their turn was coming. Unable to escape, some fought back with bare hands, were cut down immediately. Some begged for mercy, were killed anyway. Some simply stood there frozen in shock as soldiers approached, were stabbed where they stood. Justinian had solved his political problem. No more unified opposition, no more blue and green alliance. The survivors would remember what happened when you challenged imperial authority, would remember that the emperor could and would kill tens of thousands of his own people in their own social space to maintain power. If you are feeling sick right now, that is appropriate. This actually happened. We know because multiple Byzantine historians recorded it. Prupius, Marcellinus, John Malales. The numbers vary slightly. Some say 25,000, some say 35,000, but all agree it was tens of thousands killed in the Hippodrome during NA. But the massacre was not the only thing that happened that day. While soldiers killed the crowd, Justinian's officials went through the stands identifying specific individuals, political enemies, faction leaders, wealthy families who had supported the opposition. These people were not killed. They were pulled from the crowd, dragged down to the arena floor, held for special treatment, and among them were women, wives, and daughters of blue and green officials who had called for Justinian's removal. These women had committed no crime except being related to the wrong people. What happened to them in the days after the massacre shows how the Byzantines used gender-specific humiliation as political terror. It becomes crucial when we return to Helena and what happened with that bull. 73 women were arrested after the Nika riots. All were from noble families and affiliated with opposition factions. Most had done nothing more than attend races with their families. This was not only about politics, but about hierarchy, behavior, and the consequences of standing on the wrong side of power. These women were held in chambers beneath the Hippodrome of Constantinople for 3 days. They were isolated, exhausted, and deliberately weakened. On the 4th day, they were brought into the arena one by one. The Hippodrome was open again. The crowd was smaller, perhaps 10,000, carefully chosen loyal citizens, people who needed to witness what disobedience cost. The women were led through the arena gates. The atmosphere shifted, louder, restless, charged. Only days earlier, they had worn silk and gold. Now they were dressed simply, stripped of all markers of status. Their hair had been cut unevenly, not styled, but taken without care. They were paraded around the track under guard. The crowd was encouraged to react. Voices rose, objects were thrown. The women were forced to complete the full circuit in silence. Some struggled to continue. All were changed by the end. At the center of the arena, they were made to kneel. A herald announced their accusations, crimes of association, loyalty, and family ties. Then their sentences were read: exile, confiscation of property, permanent disgrace. They were sent away to distant regions of the empire. The message was unmistakable. Women connected to political defiance would lose everything: status, identity, protection. This pattern appears repeatedly throughout Byzantine history. Whenever women were perceived as threats to order, humiliation became a tool. Not execution, but exposure. Not death, but erasure. The Byzantines refined punishments designed to be remembered. Blinding was one such method. A rival could no longer rule, but would live on as a warning. Other punishments were slower and more public. Some involved chariots once meant for sport. These were not acts of chaos, but controlled displays, measured, intentional, designed to imprint fear. The Hippodrome was often full. People felt compelled to watch. The empire ensured they did. Chroniclers mention another recurring category: disgraced noble women, accused of adultery, heresy, factional loyalty, or angering the wrong authority. They could not always be executed, but they could be displayed. This ritual was known as the procession of shame. Arrest. Public accusation, detention below the arena, preparation, haircut, clothing stripped of meaning, strength reduced. Then came the walk. Guards at either side, names announced, accusations read aloud. The woman was required to finish the circuit. At the end, she knelt. Her sentence followed, usually exile, sometimes confinement. The goal was never death. It was memory, a lesson delivered through ritual. This was not violence alone. It was theater, power performed, authority reaffirmed. And this is why suspicion about Byzantine civilization is justified. So the question remains: why did ordinary people accept this system? How did citizens of a Christian empire watch these scenes without revolt? The answer lies not in cruelty alone, but in psychology. First, there was faction loyalty. If the victim belonged to the opposing faction, the crowd reacted with approval. Blues found satisfaction in seeing Greens humiliated. Greens felt the same toward Blues. This created instant emotional investment and made spectators feel involved in the outcome. Second was social control through fear. Everyone watching understood the implication. Any mistake, any political misalignment, any association with the wrong people, you could be next. Better to sit in the crowd than stand in the arena. Third was religious justification. The empire claimed divine authority. The emperor ruled as God's representative on earth. Those who opposed him were framed as enemies of divine order. Watching their punishment became an act of witnessing supposed justice. Fourth was the scarcity of entertainment. The Hippodrome of Constantinople was one of the few public venues available. Chariot races were common and predictable. These special spectacles were rare and unforgettable. People attended because there was nothing else like it. This was the show. And fifth was human darkness, the quiet capacity for cruelty that emerges when permission is given, when authority approves, when the victim is sufficiently othered, when thousands react together. The Byzantines understood this dynamic. They exploited it deliberately. The Hippodrome was not merely an arena. It was a mechanism for manufacturing obedience, a place where resistance was framed as futile and publicly discouraged. Each step of normalization made the next easier to accept. But even in Byzantium, there were limits. Some methods unsettled audiences accustomed to regular brutality. These were used rarely, mentioned only indirectly in the Chronicles. One such method involved animals. not lions or bears, as in Roman games. The Byzantines rejected those as pagan excess. Instead, animals were used symbolically, not to kill, but to terrify, not to injure, but to break psychologically. This leads back to Helena. She was not meant to be executed. The bull was not intended to harm her. It was trained, controlled, guided. It was positioned behind her, just close enough to be felt. She could hear it, smell it, sense its presence without seeing it. The fear was carefully engineered. The crowd reacted intensely. Some watched closely. Some waited for her to break. The bull loomed, never attacking, only existing. Helena believed she was about to die. The anticipation stretched on. Fear did the work intended. When the animal was finally led away, she collapsed. She was released the next day and sent into exile. She died 2 years later. Her cause of death was never recorded, but the spectacle had achieved its purpose. Other women took notice. Other families reconsidered their loyalties. Political choices changed. This is how control was enforced. This is what emperors approved. This is what occurred in the Hippodrome for centuries. The ruins of the Hippodrome still stand in modern Istanbul. You can walk there today, on ground where thousands once watched power perform itself. The night grows quieter now. The echoes begin to fade. The journey slows its breath. Somewhere far behind us, stone seats cool under moonlight. Sand settles back into silence. A torch hisses softly, then dims. What once roared with voices now listens only to wind. And as the centuries loosen their grip, you feel the weight lift. The air grows lighter. Your shoulders soften. You are no longer standing among crowds. The past does not follow you home. It remains where it belongs, behind stone, behind memory. If this story stayed with you, you are welcome to return. A quiet like, a gentle share, a soft subscription, so these nights can meet again. Goodbye, and we will meet again.